Hello and welcome to episode 277 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fan's weekly podcast of many topics. I'm Mike Sollosi, and I'm here to talk about Final Fantasy XIV some more with you this week. We are doing a 4-part series on Final Fantasy XIV. This is part 2, and joining me for this edition is Zach Wilkerson.
Hey there.
And RPG Fan super veteran Liz Maas.
Hello.
Hey, Liz, we haven't talked on a podcast before, which is weird because I've met you in person like 6 or 7 times before.
Exactly.
Yeah, normally I podcast with people first and then awkwardly meet them at a convention. But for you and I, we went.
Had to switch it up, though.
Yeah, for you and I, we went in the reverse order. But anyway, I am so glad that you're here, Liz, because you are going to be the FF14 OG compared to Zach and I.
Yep.
This episode is all
Excellent.
about. This episode is all about Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward, the 2015 expansion that takes the story of Final Fantasy XIV a little bit to the north, to Ishgard and Kurthus and the Dravania and a floating continent that might sound familiar to Final Fantasy fans, and all kinds of interesting places. When it landed, it was widely popular. I think me thinking back to that time, people seemed to like it more than original FF14 in general. And I know that the discussion of it on RPGFan and its podcast was extremely positive. But before we go into Heavensward specifically, let's talk about our individual FF14 journeys a little bit. I will give an abridged version of what I said in the last episode. I started playing in 2016, and my FF14 binging has come and gone in different spurts, most recently in early 2020, but I'm currently on break, but I will resume in the lead up to Endwalker, probably this summer, but I'm no promises. So Liz, I teased it a little bit, but you've been an FF14 fan for quite a while. How did your FF14 journey begin, and how has it gone?
It actually started with some people from RPGFan, actually. I started in early Realm Reborn, like shortly after launch, and I started playing with some RPGFan people, Mike Salvato, Stephen Mayerink, and Derek Heemsbergen. We all played together on Hyperion, and I've basically been playing ever since, with the exception of like 1 year break in Stormblood. And here I am.
But I mean, you do parts of the story that I am too afraid to get deep into. Like, I know that you're at least a little bit into crafting and end game raiding. Are you still
Yes.
are you caught up to both of those things in the current patch?
We did the most. I'm actually on the last fight of the current Savage Raid. The second part of the last fight of this current Savage Raid. I haven't done all the ultimates yet, but I'm going to now that I have time. Since the new ultimate got delayed by like a year. And as for crafting, we did, on my server at least, Leviathan, we did a big crafting project, was basically restoring Ishgard, which also relates to this podcast. Well, the Ishgard part anyway. So we just finished that up, and it looks amazing.
Yeah,
Looks incredible.
That's a worldwide or server-wide mega project that you recently finished, which is hella impressive.
Oh yes, it was pretty awesome. It actually started a little over a year ago, probably a year and a half ago, on every server, and it's now like complete. And they recently announced housing, which means that players will get to move into Ishgard, but not until 6.1, so that's about a year out, I estimate. But I'm very excited for that.
And okay, if my math is right, there was only 4 Savage Raids in Realm Reborn, and then there's been 12 in every expansion since, which means that you've done about 39 and a half more Savage Raids than I have. Okay, so congratulations, Liz.
There's been a lot, but thanks. I did miss a couple of Savage Raids because of reasons, but I'm glad that I got back into Savage and Shadowbringers and
all right, so for
mostly up to date.
So for Savage Raids, which is the second highest tier of difficulty in FF14, behind only those ultimate things that I will never ever even think about. You're at least in the mid-30s, which is hella impressive. You are a very dedicated FF14 player, and sometimes I think about just quitting podcasting and RPGFan just to play FF14 and Hades for the rest of my days. But I'm not there. I'm not there yet. Oh, I love Hades. Oh, I really do. It's the one 2020 game that I'm like sort of still playing. But
I just got it. I'm so excited.
It's good. If you go in there with like the right attitude and and just with expectations of what a roguelike is, then you're going to be golden. But anyway, Zach, we're not here to talk about Hades or about unless let's see. Because Hades is a different expansion, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah.
Indeed.
So, Zach, not specific to Heavensward, what has your FF14 journey been like?
So I am one of the newer players on staff. I started playing, I think, technically at the very beginning of 2020. And I sort of doodled around with it through January, and then, March happened. And then I am obsessed now. I think I'm on, the only person I see on maybe more often than me is Liz. And if I want to see Liz, I go over and hang out in Ishgard. Well, maybe used to, not anymore.
I am very easy to find there.
You are indeed. Because we're on the same server. And I'm up through current content now. I am in, some end game, grind stuff, like relic grind stuff, which is maybe not my favorite thing. And I am also, just kind of doing the regular tombstone stuff. I have not done Savage because every time I watch one of those videos, my brain hurts. I'm I don't even understand how to understand all these mechanics, let alone avoid them. So I'm pretty casual player. But eventually I'll try some of those EX trials and Savage stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I started with a Dragoon. I main Dragoon mostly, and I also play a Dark Knight. Those are my two 80s. And I've beelined the story. I've done every dungeon. I mean, I've done all the normal content, combat-wise, that I think you can do, because I have a problem. When I looked at my volume of playtime in 2020 on my PS4 thing, I'm not even going to say the number. It was ridiculous. But yeah.
Don't never look at my Steam.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Now we were talking about Savage and difficulty ratings. I'm trying to organize what the various difficulties of different content in FF14 are. I think you have normal, which is story stuff. Then you have expert, which I think would be the base level of raids and trials and level 50, 60, 70, 80 content. And then you would have probably extreme trials, then savage raids, then ultimate trials, right?
That sounds about right. Yeah. I mean, I think that regular raids and alliance raids are sort of similar in terms of difficulty. They're certainly harder than main story content, but they're not even on the same level of as extreme.
Yeah. Okay. So that would be expert content, like the optional stuff at that outside the main story. Yeah, I think that basically tracks. So, Zach, you and I are comfortably in the expert extreme range, while Liz is living in savage.
Yeah.
I'm trying to live in ultimate, but I'm going to finish the savage first.
I am too afraid to even look at the vendor that takes in ultimate tokens. I don't even, I'm not going anywhere near there, but, we got FF14 on the brain always, but maybe in particular now because pretty recently, in early February, we got the announcement for Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great trailer.
Yep. Looks like.
Oh, yes.
And it's, let's see, they're going to that island nation that's sort of in between Eorzea and the other continent, and we're going at least into Garlemald to take the fight back to the Empire a little bit. And it looks like that the final zone where the final story boss is might be the moon, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm living for the Final Fantasy IV references here.
Yeah, and
the lunar whale that you can get.
Yeah,
the lunar whale. The fact that the trailer main character goes from Dark Knight to Paladin for this expansion, there's just so many.
I mean, the Warrior of Light literally turned to the dark to be the Shadowbringer in 2019, and now we're having the Cecil Dark Knight to Paladin transformation to match his literal character transformation in FF4. Yeah. For a while there was a trademark Forspoken coming out, but I think that Forspoken floating around there. But I think Endwalker is a much cooler name than Forspoken. But
very much so.
Yeah, but if everyone's going to call it FF14 EW, that makes me either think of Entertainment Weekly or people just making an expression of disgust, like ew.
Ew.
Yeah. So that's where we're going to be in late 2021 and beyond. But for now, let's roll the clock back to 2015. The Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward expansion. I think this is. Maybe this is an overgeneralization, but I think this is when Yoshi P and his team figured out how to make Final Fantasy XIV, because every expansion since Heavensward has matched it almost point for point in like what levels the dungeons appear at, and their content delivery system schedule, and how they pattern, the post game raids and trials and dungeons. Like all of them since Heavensward have done them like Heavensward, so it's hugely important for the shape of Final Fantasy XIV from 2015 onward. But also just like it just kicks ass. Like FF14 is always a theme park of activities and excellent story content, and then a rich set of end game content. Liz, Zach and I were not playing FF14 in 2015, but you were. So how do you remember the Heavensward run up? And you'll be forgiven if every detail isn't completely fresh, because this was 6 years ago.
It was a long time ago. Now I feel old. Thanks.
We are all in our mid-30s here, just like the number of Savage Raids you've completed.
That's one way to think about it, I guess. Obviously the details are a bit hazy, but I do remember the run up very well, because like even in A Realm Reborn, you see Korthus, like, I wouldn't say early, but you see it in like the level 30 to 40 story range. Before they boosted the EXP for the main story. And I remember, like, you could see Ishgard from there, and you're just, like, not allowed in. And then even, like, leading up to, like, the end of Realm Reborn, you're, like, even before you meet Shiva and all that, you're, like, oh, you get to see Ishgard one day? Because you kind of, like, hear whispers of it on occasion from that visit to Korthus. And then when you get to going through all the level 50 content, you start going through all the primals, and there's a bit of a lull in content for a while, and then it starts to pick up once you get to Korthus, and you meet Ysayle before you know who she is. You only know her as Iceheart back then, and then eventually she leads you to Shiva, and you fight Shiva, and then basically you know at this point that you're going to Heavensward. So when they announced at the Fan Fest that I was at, actually, I think that was 2014. When they announced that the expansion was called Heavensward and we were going to Ishgard, I mean, we all but knew, but I was just like very excited for it, because all I knew was there was a 1,000-year-long dragon song war between elves and dragons, and I played and still play in Eorzeans, so I was like, this is going to be the expansion for me.
Yeah, you're the number one Eorzeans fan, and like, if playing through Heavensward, if you weren't an Eorzeans fan before, then you'll become one, because there are a number of potential player husbands and wives in that cast.
Oh yes, Americus is very popular Eorzeans. I mean, I like him, but I don't quite stand him like a lot of people. But he's a very sweet dude.
I'm in his fan club, that's for sure. I mean, but there's Emmerich and Estinian and Orshafon and Ysayle, who you mentioned, Hilda, whom I love.
She is especially wonderful because she is half Eorzean, half Hyur, which is like half human and half elf. If you're listening to this and don't actually play Final Fantasy XIV, and she's adorable and sweet. And if you want more of her, play the Machinist job quests.
Yeah, she is so spicy, and Ishgard has a not really an explicit caste system, but there is a nobles versus peasantry class struggle a little bit that Hilda.
There's a very clear divide.
Yeah, and Hilda straddles that because she was the product of an affair between an Eorzean noble and a Hyur maid, and then she ends up leading a resistance movement within Ishgard. I love Hilda. There are so many awesome characters in Ishgard, but.
She's amazing.
Zach, the moment for me for the Welcome to Heavensward moment was near the beginning when they gave me a flying mount, and I got to actually gaze Heavensward in the context of gameplay. Like, what was your early memory of getting into the level 60 to 61 content? Earlier this, I guess in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, so like, I liked A Realm Reborn, and it was fine, but like those story quests, like during the patches, were just miserable, and they've improved that since then. But as it's getting closer to like 2.4, 2.5, I'm like, all right. Like as soon as like you start spending more time in Kurthus, I'm like, oh, this story is actually interesting. Because I really never liked, like I like a lot of the characters from Realm Reborn now, but like I didn't identify with them as being like significant, or like being interesting until honestly Shadowbringers in some cases. But I'd say honestly, like walking into Ishgard the first time was like the first moment for me, like that music, and the setting, and the fact that the city actually like totally makes sense, which I can't say for some of the starter cities in A Realm Reborn.
They have gotten the FF14 guys have gotten better at urban planning over the years.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And so I think it was just like it was like the mood that it set, like with the snowfall and the music at night in Ishgard. I'm like, okay, this is going to be my jam. And it is. So yeah, I mean, like the characters, I think Estinian and Isael are still my two favorite characters in the game. I just think it's fabulous.
Estinian and Isael are wonderful, but also I have a special place for them in my heart because they are in my Triple Triad deck. Because the way
reason.
Yeah, the way Triple Triad works is once you have enough cards to unlock all the opponents, is you're allowed as many 3-star cards as you want, but you're only allowed 1, 4, or 5 stars. And so what your 5-star is up to the is a matter of debate, or like what the best 5-star is a matter of debate. But there are only really 5 or 6 3-stars that are like the best ones, and Estinian and Isael are 2 of them. So I was quite, I see them all the time because I play so much Triple Triad. It's a little embarrassing. But let's stay in the very beginning of Heavensward, or maybe just before, talking about how Heavensward sort of set up the content delivery system for all of FF14 going forward. I noticed a pattern, I think probably like early in my Stormblood phase, where the post-game patches are always sort of putting a bow on the or telling a self-contained post-game story from like the 0.1 through the 0.3 patch, and then and while setting seeds for 2 expansions later, well then the 0.4 and 0.5 set up the next expansion. So after A Realm Reborn, there's a lot of Almigo refugee stuff in the 2.1 to 2.3 range, and then in 2.4 and 2.5 there's still some Alamigo stuff, but it's really setting up the events leading up to the worst dinner party in video game history, and then the exile to Ishgard.
That is true.
So and then this is jumping ahead a little bit in the 3.1 through 3 patches, they do sort of the end of the Dragon Song War, leading up to some real dramatic clashes against Nidhogg. And then in 3.4 and 3.5 is the Warriors of Darkness stuff, and you learn about the sort of the arrangement of the different shards. And even in the trial series in 3.x is about someone who comes from another shard. So they're basically teasing the events of Shadowbringers 4 years in advance, while setting up the events of Stormblood 2 years in advance. They set the seeds for that in Heavensward, and it ends after you need to get the hell out of Dodge. Dodge being Ul'dah, and in 2.5 you use your connections with those that you forged in those Kurthus quests in the level like 37 to 42 range in Realm Reborn, because you meet Orshafon in that quest range. Because he's because he heads up an outpost in the middle of Kurthus in neutral territory. But you meet up with him, he hides you, and then basically smuggles you into Ishgard, which is an isolationist state that does not involve itself in Eorzean politics, is completely ignoring the Garlean invasion of the rest of the continent, because they've been dealing with their own war, the Dragonsong War, for about 1,000 years. And that Dragonsong War and the politics and events around Ishgard are all about, or what Heavensward is all about. And Zach and Liz, you both have expressed a lot of affection for Ishgard, even in the early minutes of this podcast. And I'm just gonna reiterate what you said, because I mean, like, Ishgard communicates sort of like centuries of history, because it's a bunch of huge, grandiose walls and bridges and a central cathedral and citadel, with in sort of a multi-tiered layer cake of stone paths, with the sort of the more highbrow upper area and lowbrow slums in the lower elevations, that even parts of it are even called the broom, I think, because that's like where you sweep your unwanted messes. But it has a character to it, and a regalness to it that is just, there's just a presence to Ishgard that is maybe a little bit less bustling than the main hub cities, because I mean, I was playing through Ishgard stuff in 2019 mostly, when the end game content was definitely not in Ishgard, but I don't know, that there's like Ishgard has weight to it that was that I could feel even when it was mostly empty of player characters other than people like me that were running through that part of the story for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like very like medieval on purpose, of course, and like you've got knights and all those things, and it feels, I think, in some ways like the most like classically Final Fantasy city, but also like it just made me think of like, those giant like obviously like they're pulling from medieval and European architecture for it, and I'm kind of a sucker for those things. And so that is, I think, a big part of why I liked it. But I think also like all those dynamics you're talking about, and I think that like the way that the dynamics within Ishgard then sort of become reflected out by the dynamics of Ishgard against the dragons and things like that, and just like all the power dynamics that are expressed through the city, I think are really cool. And just like sort of like that organ music in the background. I'm sorry, I could talk for days about Ishgard, but it's delightful.
Me too.
And
I'm hesitant to talk about Ishgard because I know I'll just like go on forever.
but not just Ishgard, but the first two zones of Heavensward are one area of Kurthus, I forget what, I think it's like the Eastern Kurthus Highlands or something, or Western Kurthus. It's like,
the Western Kurthus Highlands is, I think, your first zone outside the city.
That or Sea of Clouds, depending on which one you go to first. Yeah.
Yep, that's where I was going next. It was I just couldn't remember which cardinal direction of Kurthus Highlands we were talking about. But the Western Kurthus, which is a sort of a snow-covered tundra and ridge, and then Sea of Clouds, which is the most Sea of Clouds is more fantastical than like any zone in Realm Reborn. It is floating islands populated by very broad-shouldered owl people, and is and those are the two areas where you can first unlock flying. And I mentioned this to Zach earlier, but the like when you finally get a flying mount and find all of the little currents that you need to unlock flying in each zone. The first time I got to fly on my chocobo made me, not only is it exhilarating and make travel way easier, and made me think immediately, oh, I need to do this for every zone in the game because walking is for suckers.
And you literally can't walk everywhere in the Heavensward areas anyway, so you kind of stuck unlocking flying.
Yeah, like I mean, but flying is so dope. Now I can't imagine a Final Fantasy XIV without flying and floating continents. It's just the best.
Yeah. Even just unlocking flying in Realm Reborn areas was super sweet.
and that's recent. That was a 2020 patch, right?
Yeah, it was a 2020 patch. It was like last summer, I believe. But it was just super handy. Yeah. Even though the areas aren't nearly as big as Heavensward or the newer areas, it's just so handy for all those routes you get tired of taking. You just fly over it all now.
I'm not going to get mad that these areas are still broad but not totally vertical and designed for flying like other ones. I'm not going to get mad about that. I'm just going to be happy that I can fly fly to Costa del Sol.
Right.
But
and totally. Like get by all the stuff in like Mordona that's like a total pain to.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Great. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm the kind of guy who, like, as soon as I would go into a zone, I would then, like, use my compass and, like, go find every single ether current. And then I very quickly realized, like, oh, like, I have to wait to unlock the rest of them from the story. That's very sad. But I would still, every single time I go to a new area, even up to Shadowbringers, like, I'm going to go unlock every single current immediately because I want to fly immediately.
Yeah, the first place I did that was Western Kurthus Highlands, and I did it sort of casually because I'm like, oh, this is gonna be important later, so I guess I might as well do it. But I was just doing stuff, early quests in the story. I don't think I even got all of the currents there until I had to move to the Dravanian hinterlands, which is the next zone. So I was not in a hurry. But then the moment I unlocked flying and started doing it, I'm like, oh, I need to do this everywhere immediately. And I entered the same brain space as you, Zach, of making that my most urgent task whenever I visit a new zone. But
I mean, it was easier to do in Heavensward too. They've kind of like even in Stormblood and Shadowbringers, like I think they have fewer currents and more of them are attached to story quests now. So like you have to go all the way through an area and like do every quest there before they unlock it. Heavensward wasn't quite that restrictive, which I actually kind of like personally.
Yeah, some of the currents are even quest rewards for like optional dungeons. Shisui of the Violet Tides, which is the level 63 dungeon in Stormblood, I think, has a current as a quest reward, and it's technically optional, but if you want to fly in the Ruby Sea, and trust me, you do, then that's not optional at all.
You definitely want to fly in Ruby Sea. I do not like swimming in this game at all. Swim flying is the way to go in Stormblood. That is pretty fun, yeah.
But back to Heavensward. The outset of the plot is that there's been this centuries-long war between Dragonkind and Ishgard, and it's been going on so long that the dragons who do live for millennium remember the events of how the war started very clearly, but with Ishgard they've almost become entered into legend, or it's been so long that that Ishgardians basically don't know any reality other than fighting the dragons nonstop. And there hasn't been a knockdown drag out maybe in a while between the two areas, but like Ishgard is sort of in a perpetual state of semi-ruin and rebuilding because of dragon attacks. Yep. And a lot of dungeons in the Kurthus area, like Stone Vigil and that one at the north end of Western Kurthus, are basically ruined forts that had been taken over by dragons. There's a lot of fighting dragons in the body of Heavensward. Part of the genesis of the Dragonsong War was a dragon, Hraesvilgr, who is one of the sort of seven a major brood of Midgardstormer, who are the sort of the leadership of all the dragons, entered into a relationship with an Eorzean woman named Shiva. Yes, that's right. And Hraesvilgr has not, because Shiva had the lifespan of an Eorzean. Their relationship was maybe brief by dragon terms, and Shiva was completely made into a martyr and exiled by her own kind, which sort of got Hraesvilgr to be less than friendly towards humans. But more importantly than that, one of Hraesvilgr's sisters, Ratatoskr, was who visited humans out of interest, was murdered, and then her eyes were stolen to be used as powerful artifacts, because a lot of power exists from coming out of dragon eyes. And we learn more about the origins of the war throughout the story, but basically, like, Hraesvilgr is neutral, Ratatoskr is dead, and their brother Nidhogg is the dragon who is most of the impetus towards continuing the war, because he is bloodthirsty and wants nothing more than to eradicate all of Ishgard. I know I'm avoiding certain plot points, but is that mostly it?
Yeah, I mean, like, there are some like eye switches and
they left out
things like that.
Oh yeah,
those that come up later. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty accurate, and I think it's like and I love the way that they frame the story with, who's the head of House Fortoms?
Edmond de Fortemps.
In a way that he's like telling the story, like it makes it feel like this like ancient history type thing, and like the way they blend the history of the war and like kind of give it out to you like in like sort of small bits, I think makes the character dynamics even more fascinating and makes a lot of the characters and the dragons even more interesting. Like as you meet like Tiamat later and things like that, and the way that Bahamut's related to all these things, and Midgard Stormer, and like I think it's just they do amazing. Like it's like this self-contained world build that they don't use a ton after or before, but it's such a remarkable, almost self-contained story to me.
Yeah, Bahamut, who is a major player in the 1.0 story of FF14 and the Coil of Bahamut raids in A Realm Reborn, is another sibling of Hraesvelgr and Ratatoskr and Nidhogg. And Midgardsormr is the father of those three dragons, who met his end taking down a Garlean airship before the events of Realm Reborn, and still exists as in spirit form in the Keeper of the Lake dungeon in the I think 2.4 or 2.5 or 2.5 content. All right, it was 2.5. And but after you meet his spirit in that dungeon, he decides to accompany you as this tiny dragon, sort of just floating around you. Only you can see him, but as a means of him wanting to see if you're worthy and can be trusted, and he even seals some of your Warrior of Light powers away temporarily as a sort of a test. So as you play through Heavensward, you have Edmond de Fortemps sort of providing narration in the form of him writing down the events of the game as a memoir, and Midgardsormr sort of floating around you, going, so this is how you're going to proceed, kind of deal. But in Ishgard, there's a bunch of characters you've already mentioned. Emmerich is the illegitimate son of the ruler of Ishgard. What's his title
King
again?
Thornton.
King Thornton.
Yeah, King Thornton. He's basically the king and the pope of a religion centered around
it's basically a religious monarchy, which is like a little weird, but
yeah. So, but Emmerich is the captain of the guard, and Edmond de Fortemps is the head of one of the four noble houses that wields a lot of power. And he immediately makes the Warrior of Light and their companions wards that give them wards of House Fortemps, which gives them a little bit of freedom to move around the city. But after speaking to a lot of people and getting involved in some local politics, you're put on trial and have to fight your way out of a prison sentence pretty early on, which is pretty interesting. And eventually you get essentially assigned to a quest to try and visit Hraesvelgr, the dragon that we mentioned before, to see if he could either end the war or speak to Nidhogg or just clarify a few things. And you're accompanied by Isael, who is maybe the incarnation of Shiva, Hraesvelgr's lover from thousands of years ago, and also Estinian, who is the foremost dragoon of the Ishgardian Order of Dragoons, who has one of Nidhogg's eyes on his person to give him extra power, and wants nothing more than to murder Nidhogg and maybe also Hraesvelgr. Dragoons are very into dragon murder in Final Fantasy XIV.
As it turns out.
Yeah, and this sets up for a lot of the middle of the game being kind of a road trip, going west from Ishgard towards the end of Dravania to try and meet this dragon, accompanied by Estinian, Isael, and Alphino, one of the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. And that's sort of what Heavensward is to me. Ishgard is wonderful, but you're kind of going through increasingly exotic locales with this real band of misfits trying to find the last dragon that might be able to help.
Yeah, and I think it's important to note that Isael is on the dragon's side. So her and Estinian traveling together, and just the dynamics that those two have, and just the because I don't think she's technically she is an incarnation of Shiva, but it's because she summoned her earlier in an effort to, right? If I'm not mistaken. Isn't that how it goes? She summons her, and so she becomes an incarnation of her, in an effort to defend the dragons. And just the push-pull of that whole dynamic, and Alphino Alphino sort of coming to terms with a lot of the mistakes that he made in the 2.1 through 2.5, areas. I think also just like there's a lot of great character growth getting to know these people. I think it's one of the things that makes it, to me, the strongest expansion from a story perspective, because you spend so much time with those three people.
Yeah, I'm with you. And Isael's position is interesting. I don't think she's like a descendant of Shiva. I don't think Shiva had children necessarily.
No, she was an incarnation, or at least she believed herself to be an incarnation. And then when she finally talks to Hraesvelgar is like, actually no.
Yeah, I think the way I read it is that the story of Shiva and Hraesvelgar, which did actually happen, yes. Is considered sort of blasphemous by the Ishgardian Church, and but still the legend persists, and there is some records of it. And Isael discovered this, became maybe somewhat obsessed with it, thought that there could be an end to the Dragonsong War with it, devoted part of her life to researching it, ends up building some followers and and titling herself Lady Iceheart, and then she successfully summons Shiva into her using primal summoning techniques, because if there's belief and crystals, then you can create a primal, and sort of identifies herself as a reincarnation of Shiva, although really what she did was believe in the legend strongly and then summon the primal into her. And when she does meet Hraesvelgar, he's basically, just like Liz said, he's like, no, you're not Shiva, but no one can replace Shiva, kind of feeling about it. But it's that journey takes you through the icy parts of Kurthus, then into the Dravanian forelands and hinterlands, which are just a really beautiful forest and mountainy area. Then into the churning mists, which are sort of a higher mountainous area that have ruins that look more classical Greek than medieval European, and have some really beautiful vistas and pathways, and that's also where you meet a community of Mughals, which is another reason why this is a more Final Fantasy expansion than Realm Reborn was.
Oh, I won't talk about the Mughals. They had way too many quests, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I forgot about those. Yeah, those were annoying.
They made you do a bunch of silly nonsense, but looking for missing wallets and silly hunts before you could continue on through the churning mists. But also there's the Beast Tribe crafting quests for the level 50s are over there, and that's something I gladly did not engage in.
Those ones are actually kind of worth it, not only because it's good for leveling your crafters, but also because in one of those quests you get to slap a Moogle. Ooh. So if they annoy you as much as they annoyed me in Heavensward, just take the quest that lets you slap a Moogle.
I thought you were gonna tempt me with unique mounts or triple triad cards, but I think what you chose is better than those things.
There is a cool mount. There is like a giant fluffy cloud that you can buy once you max out the Moogle Beast Tribe level.
Every Beast Tribe has one or two really cool mounts to choose from.
Yeah.
But my very favorite one is it's my favorite mount in the whole game, actually, is the Griffin that you get from some Stormblood Beast Tribe quests. I use that Griffin all the time. It's almost like my signature mount now. But
I love that Griffin.
Yeah, Beast Tribe quests are cool. And in Ishgard you get to do them with Mughals, with is it the Vanu or the owl people around the around the Sea of Clouds area. And maybe my favorite are these silly little bug men in the Dravanian forelands. They're part of a sort of a hive mind of insect-like beings, but this small colony is split off from the hive mind, so they're all having really heartbreaking identity crises, like having to think for themselves for the first time. And I love those quests. Those the big dragonfly mount you get from them isn't the best, but just for leveling up your alts in the 50s and for meeting all of these bug boys trying their hardest. I love them.
Flying a giant bug is pretty fun, though, I have to admit.
Yeah,
those were probably my favorite Beast Tribe quests of Heavensward.
Yeah, and for some of their quests, you have to fly the bug around and like crop dust certain plants to for as pesticide. It's the side quests in FF14 are usually pretty good, but they're, especially when there's good writing surrounding them, like the bugs in Dravanian Forelands. I feel bad. I can't remember what the name of their species is.
It was either the Nath or the Vath. I can't remember which one their cat was.
You're right. No, I think Gnath is the name of the ones that are still attached to the Queen, and the Vath might be this split off of them, this split off colony that you help. I think it
is a Vath.
Yeah, that's right. So Gnath or Nath is like the main colony, but the one that you help is Vath. But anyway, these are all just little pieces of the puzzle in Heavensward, and the last area you go to before you get to the true end game is the Dravanian hinterlands, which again are have a bunch of really cool looking ruins. But there you the end game crafting hub is over there. What's the name of those ruins where the goblins are near where Alexander is?
Idleshire.
Idleshire, that's it. Yeah, the area around Idleshire is really pretty, and you meet a beautiful FF1 reference in
Matoya.
In Matoya, who has a connection to the nation of scholars that I always forget about.
Charlene.
Charlene.
This is Charlene. Yeah.
Charlene is the adjective. I forget what the is it like Charleyan maybe? I forget. I should have done some research ahead of time. But the Matoya has connections to the nation of scholars where a lot of the signs of the Seventh Dawn come from, and through some mumbo jumbo with her, you find out what happened to Y'shtola and Thancred at the end of Realm Reborn. Turns out they basically Y'shtola used some pretty forbidden-esque magic called Flow that teleported her and Thancred into a sort of a magical ether that exists between realities, and Matoya allows you to summon Y'shtola back. So the fan favorite. The fan favorite cat lady from Realm Reborn comes back in the second half of Heavensward, but now she's even more magic sensitive than before, but has also lost her eyesight. So now she is a sassy blind cat lady and not just a sassy cat lady. So yeah,
and even sassier as the story goes on.
Oh yeah,
past Heavensward. But that's another podcast.
Shadowbringers. Oh.
Hello, Shadowbringers.
Yeah. She delivers the sickest burn in Final Fantasy history in some of the Stormblood post game, and then
oh my God.
And then in Shadowbringers she reinvents her look and a little bit, and is just even more kick-ass. She Y'shtola is one of the fan favorite defining NPCs of FF14, and I think she earns it. And she's a little quiet in the body of in most of Stormblood, but absolutely kick ass in Heavensward and Shadowbringers.
Yeah, save for that one very spicy line in Stormblood that you mentioned.
Yeah, and that's in the post game, not in the proper main story of Stormblood.
Yeah,
and
later on in the patches.
Yeah, and eventually you use the same means that you, apparently when you summon back Y'shtola, you also successfully summon back Thancred, but he appears in a different part of the world, so he has to survive naked, living off the land for a few weeks before you finally connect back with him. You get some of the team back together, you finally meet Hraesvelgr, and he responds to you with a whole lot of indifference, and you learn more details about the origins of the Dragonsong War, including a giant cover-up by most of the ruling parties of Ishgard. It's abundantly clear that it was Ishgard betraying a pact with the dragons and not the other way around. Nidhogg had both of his eyes removed in the part of the early conflicts of the war. One of whom is held by Estinian, and the other of which is I think in the tomb or in the sarcophagus of the first king Thordan. Mm-hmm. And out of pity, Hraesvelgr gave one of his eyes to Nidhogg so Nidhogg could continue fighting. And this basically has the party storming back to Ishgard, demanding demanding justice or trying to bring that maiden group to justice. You have to do a pretty challenging at the time dungeon through the part of the court system and prison system of Ishgard, and then in one of the most heartbreaking moments of the whole game,
the vault.
Yeah. At the end of the vault dungeon, you're about to be shot by one of the main knights in the order, but Orshafant takes the blow for you, and which is just sad because there has almost been no one as helpful and as respectful to the Warrior of Light in this entire game as Orshafant.
When we talk about Heavensward characters, I mean, he's one of the best ones, and I mean, he's in the very famous line, like a smile better suits a hero. It comes at that point, and just like it's. Of all the deaths in this game, and then we're going to get to one that maybe I find even more heartbreaking, but I think it's the one that is played the most heartbreakingly. It's such a delightful character, such a good dude.
He dies in your arms, and is a perfect example of video game hero sexuality because Orshafant is madly in love with the hero, either definitely romantically or exaggeratingly non-romantically. But it does not matter. It does not matter how you respond to him or what gender your Warrior of Light is. Orshafant loves you.
He does. And if you remember, when you first met him in I almost said Stormblood. Oh my god! In Realm Reborn, he didn't take too kindly to you at first. I mean, he still helped you out, but like he came a long way in his attitude towards your character, and to the point where he like when he's dying in your arms in that scene, he like says that one line that like just makes you want to cry every time. He said,
because
a smile better suits a hero, and you're just like, ah.
You're looking at him in despair because Orshafant's been one of your best friends, and he says, no, don't cry. A smile better suits a hero, and that just that goes right to the heart.
Oh my god, does it ever?
That dungeon still makes me mad, not because of the contents of the dungeon, but because of what happens to Orshafant at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's one of the first like great dungeons in the game, I think, though. I mean,
it's very
it's
good.
so beautiful too.
Great setting. Yeah. Great music. The fights are good. Some of the cool mechanics are a little bit weird, like having to but I think it's them perfecting their dungeon craft.
Oh, for sure.
And they get even better on Heavensward post game, but yeah.
They recently added the feature to go to a dungeon in explore mode. They haven't gotten Heavensward dungeons into it yet, but as soon as we can do Heavensward dungeons in explore mode, for like G-pose and just like taking pictures and stuff, the vault is definitely one of my destinations because it's like really beautiful and it's just so Ishgardian.
Oh yeah, I love the dungeons in Dravania, like the oh shoot, they all have weird dragon names, but a lot of them
is just amazing. It's my favorite dungeon in the whole game.
Sorkai, Somal.
There's the one where you fight Tiamat at the end, whom I confuse with Tiamat a little too often. But yeah, you fight Nidhogg.
I think that's Somal.
What?
I think that's Somal.
Well, yeah, no. I mean, but you fight a dragon named Tiamat, which sounds a little bit too much like Tiamat, which confuses me.
Yeah. I think that's Somal, but I'm not totally sure. Nidhogg you fight in the Aerie. That's a really good one too.
Oh yeah. The Aerie is one of the last ones. That's like the level 57 dungeon, maybe, or
it's 55. There? The vault's 57.
That's what it is. Okay, and 59 and 60 is when you start getting into some Magitech nonsense.
Oh yeah.
Because after this, you learn essentially that the ruling council of Ishgard and their order of knights protecting them, whom are called the Heavensward. Hey,
See what they did there?
Yeah, they've known the truth. They've known the truth about the Dragon Song War the whole time, and yeah, the wordplay of Heavensward, like Heavensward, because you're looking to the sky, because you're fighting dragons in the sky, and this is the game that introduces flight, so you get to sort of go Heavensward for the first time, and the Heavensward are the name of this important order of knights, whom we're not done talking about yet. Basically, you learn that there is some very important, highly technological ruins. Oh, what's the civilization that has all the Magitech stuff?
Allagans.
That's right. Yeah, the Allagan tombstones. I can't believe I forgot this. It's been too long. I need to get back into the game. I stopped playing in May 2020. I should probably change servers also, because I changed servers to hang out with some friends from college when I was playing in 2019, 2020. But now I might need to go back because I want to play with my RPG fan peeps again.
Yeah, because you moved to like Aether or something, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're going to have data center travel soon,
so maybe I won't need to change data centers, but we'll see because
we'll have to see what the restrictions are.
And I still hang out with those college friends online, and I did get something out of being able to play with them for quite a bit in 2020. But anyway, back to Heavensward. You basically take a series of airships to a set of Allagan ruins called Azys, where I believe that's where is that where King Thordan's remains are, or?
I think they're going there in order to get in touch with some sort of a power source. I don't think that the remains work. I mean, that's where the remains end up, but I think the remains have been.
That's what it is. Yeah.
I thought in Ishgard.
You're right. King Thordan's remains were in Ishgard. The current King Thordan and his knights take the original King Thordan's grave with them to Azys to connect that with the Allagan power sources up there. And it's a big floating continent full of crazy technology, and to get past to get past, and also the Garleans bring some airships in there too, and that's where you first see the Emperor of Garlemald is in the Sea of Clouds in the in the events leading up to going to Azys. But in traveling there, I think it's to get past the Allagan defense system. Izael gives her life to let you get through, and that's maybe the second hugely tragic death that Zach was referring to earlier. Yes,
and since she's in the way she does it, I mean, she transforms into Shiva to get them past them, and then she gets shot while she's doing it. And it's maybe in my opinion, the first really, really epic, well done cutscene. I mean, 3.3 has a better one, but that sequence, I think it's just amazingly well put together. And yeah, I mean, just her growth and who she is, and then her making that sacrifice, given everything that she's tried to do at that point. To me, that's the death that hit me the hardest because I just love her character so much.
Oh, for sure. That cutscene actually made me a little mad because I disconnected before, as it was starting. She hadn't transformed into Shiva yet or anything. And back then, because now the game replays, lets you start the quest over and replay the cutscenes. But back then, that wasn't a thing. So I reconnected to the game, and they're already in Azys talking about how she, Izael gave her sacrifice. I was like, wait, what? So I had to go back to the interim to watch a cutscene, which is not as effective when you already know what happened. So I'm really upset about that death. I really wish I experienced it as intended. But that was an amazing cutscene.
Yeah, and but when you finally get to Azys and enter the Etherochemical Research Facility, the final dungeon of the game, to confront King Thordan before he can tap into this ultimate power that will allow him to, both rule as a despot and kill all the dragons. Again, we're near an hour, so I want to get into endgame stuff a little bit. You fight the final boss of the Heavensward storyline, Knights of the Round, the 13 knights and King Arthur from FF7.
That's so fantastic. I mean, just the spectacle of it. I mean, it's maybe the biggest face roll trial in the entire game. It's not hard at all, but it is
playing it after the fact, it has been scaled down. It is very easy to go back and do that when you have level 60 appropriate equipment. I'm sure, Liz, it was much harder in the moment, but
the extreme. I don't remember the normal very well. I actually think it was still fairly easy when it was current, but when you go to do the extreme when it first came out, a lot of people had trouble clearing it, and I was really happy that I was able to clear it as soon as I could. That was a really cool fight with so many mechanics, and obviously the story relevance was just huge.
Yeah,
just this is what this crazy guy is capable of.
but as a story spectacle, them using basically the belief of the power of belief of everyone in Ishgard about the legend of of King Thordan and his knights, and a huge number of crystals that they brought with them, transporting it there, plus the dragon eye inside of King Thordan's tomb. Plus, the power of Azys, which we discover is Nidhogg's mother, Tiamat has been imprisoned there for centuries and was just having the life drained out of her to power this floating continent, which is crazy. All of that stuff coming together for this battle against King Thordan and his Knights of the Round. It is really, really cool, and a cool cap off to the main story of Heavensward. But the story does not end from there. Should we go into what happens to Estinian, or do we have anything more to say about Azys and the research facility?
We can go to Estinian.
Yeah. All right. Estinian makes the huge mistake, because you've already defeated Nidhogg earlier in the story, but Estinian makes the mistake of having the one Nidhogg's eye in his possession, bringing it together with the Nidhogg's eye that you get out of the tomb after King Thordan is defeated, and this allows Nidhogg to reincarnate into Estinian, making him a blood-red dragoon of death bent on destroying all of Ishgard, and taking down Nidhogg Estinian is the thrust of 3.1 through 3.3. And while this is going on, let's talk about some notable side quests. A giant Colossus appears near Idleshire because a group of Goblin Illuminati have summoned the Goblin Primal Alexander, and which becomes the raid series of Heavensward. Alexander being the giant mechanical summon from FF6 and FF9. And there's a bunch of time travel nonsense and giant robots and angry goblins in that side quest, including, I mentioned this in the previous episode, the raid videos of which inspired me to play FF14 for the first time, the Brute Justice Super Sentai themed series of battles, which is somehow, I could be off by this, Liz, Brute Justice was the signature raid for getting the best equipment in the game for probably 4 or 5 months, right? Because that's just how raids work. So yeah,
it was the middle raid of the 3 sets of raids, and it was super fun. I didn't get to do Savage right away that time, but that was a pretty tough fight. Nothing like, it wasn't as hard as the first tier. We won't talk about the first raid tier, but Brute Justice, and then even in the Savage mode, he has an extra phase.
The mechanics of it is cool, and the fact that that is a fun fight is cool. I'm just mostly flabbergasted that the signature raid of this game for perhaps 5 months was a Goblin Megazord, and which just blows my mind. And also at the same time, there's a lot of Magitech stuff, a lot of FF6 imagery going on in the Azys area of the game, and the game's and the Heavensward Trial series is the Warring Triad or 3 goddess statues from Final Fantasy VI, because basically reinterpreting those 3 endgame monsters from FF6 as primal gods of lost civilizations that were subjugated by the Allagans, which is cool as hell, and also 3 super dope trials.
Those are super fun trials.
I love Warring Triad. It's like a top 5 storyline in FF14 for me. Love them.
Yeah, and the fights are, I think for post-game trials, to me, they feel like maybe one of the first really difficult ones in terms of mechanics. I feel like the game up to then isn't really that difficult mechanically, but those, even on normal mode, I really had to really think about the mechanics.
Yeah, that's true, because you could fall off in the Sophia one.
Yeah,
would just knock you around.
You have to do some math in the Sophia trial, and it's not as bad as the Worker 7 new one from in Stormblood, but you have to do a little bit of math to avoid instant death in Sophia. Who FF6 fans that maybe don't know these trials, that was the goddess statue that was just called Goddess in FF6 Super Nintendo. But so you have these FF6 themed trials and these Alexander raids. The Alliance raid is not my favorite in Heavensward. It's themed around the ancient civilization of Mach, which is sort of lore surrounding black mages and a lot of demons and nightmare monsters in FF14. The final boss of that is Diablos, the summon from FF8. And you also there's some cool fights and settings in that quest, but it's not my favorite Alliance raid.
I think it's the weakest of the 4.
It is the weakest. Unscathed is definitely my favorite of the 3. It's just more interesting looking. You get to run through the city and fight Diablos. But Void Ark and Weeping City are not quite as memorable.
No. I like the boss at the end of Weeping City, the hair demon.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah.
Harry, she was really cool.
That's a cool fight, but for the most part, I think it's the weakest of the 4 Alliance grades. I agree. I agree with Zach.
Yeah, and I'm having to run. I've just run Void Ark like 16 times in the last 4 days for the relic quests. Mm-hmm. So now's the wrong time to ask me too.
That's fair. I can't bring myself to do that yet.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to get queues together for raids that are no longer current. But the FF14 team does a pretty decent job of, like, for random special events saying, hey guys, here's a bunch of extra weirdo currency that you can trade for rare stuff if you've run these old raids to help people trying to run them for the first time. And when I was playing, I remember the Heavensward Alliance raids were in that grab bag for a while. It was for some of the Moogle ticket stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the irregular tombstones. Yeah, that is kind of a cool way of doing it, because there's things that you can only get with those tombstones, or things that you can't get again, or things that are just easier to buy with that than doing it the old way. So it's pretty smart of them to do that, especially when they have, like, you know, like free trial periods and free weekends, stuff like that. Just
to keep older content fresh and giving more rewards and more things to do for longtime players. It's just a lot of smart design and smart social engineering that the FF14 team does. But back to Heavensward a little bit. The story of 3.1 through 3.3 is taking down Nidhogg Estinian, and eventually it ends with a really emotional moment where you're sort of struggling to, I think, remove the eyes from his body, remove the Nidhogg eyes from his body, and for a brief moment, like, you see the spirits of Orshafont and Izael sort of appear on either side of the Warrior of Light to help him with the final move.
Oh my god, that was so emotional.
Because Estinian at that point is asking you to kill him, and you and Alphino are both just, like, ripping. It's, and, like, the cutscene before it with the fight between Hraesvelgr and Nidhogg.
That was incredible.
That is like an amazing cutscene. Like, we didn't talk. Like, there's a moment where Estinian, like, shows up and, like, kills a dragon as well. That's like. It was Hraesvelgr. Really cool. Yeah, it was one of Hraesvelgr's children. Appeared like in trying to appear in a moment of solidarity between Dravania and Ishgard. Like, appeared at sort of a rally to demonstrate, hey, dragons aren't so bad. And I forget their name. It's oh shoot. It's another one of those Norse mythology sounding names. I can't remember. It's one you interacted with a lot, but I can't remember. It's the one that lives.
Vidofnir?
Yes.
Vidofnir. Oh, yeah, it was Vidofnir,
Vidofnir, who lives in the tower at the edge of the Dravanian Forelands, and Vidofnir behaves very well. Even rescues a small child that briefly went under attack. But Estinian appears at the rally, and does he straight up murder Vidofnir or just badly injure her? I think Vidofnir survives, but at the time,
yeah, she's still alive, but it was really bad at the time.
It was a real bad moment. The presumed dead Nidhogg appearing again, but that moment with Izael and Orshafont saving you one last time, and to defeat Estinian, but also have Estinian survive, is just so powerful. And you also get to see Estinian maskless for the first time in one of the cutscenes afterwards.
Oh my god, yeah!
And he's a handsome fellow. Let me tell you.
Was anybody as surprised as I was? Like, when we first saw his face, like, absolutely. I expected, like, obviously I knew he was Ellison, but I expected someone older looking, and he looked like almost younger than my character, and I was just like, dude.
I think it's another callback to FF4, because in the final cutscene of FF4, Kain takes off his mask and standing on I think Mount Ordeals, and you see his blonde hair flowing behind him, which is maybe a little bit of an unexpected look for Kain. And for Estinian to also have flowing like platinum blonde hair is with a final unmasking at the end of the game, I thought was similar and might have been a direct callback.
Yeah, that was probably a callback. But I was just like, hey, he's like better looking than I don't know what I expected. I just expected him to be older, but I was like, hey, he's, a little hotter than I thought.
Yeah. It's like, oh man, Emmerich has some competition now.
Right? Izael has some competition now.
But so yeah, an incredible moment to end the Dragonsaw War arc, and then the beginning of the next arc. Again, I mentioned that it teases Shadowbringers. 5 mysterious warriors from another world visit. You reconnect with Thancred, fight them a couple times. Why can't I think of his name? The Elzen member of the Signs of the Seventh Dawn.
Urianger.
Yeah, Urianger, that's it, right. Urianger, one of those guys who I give barely half an ass about in Realm Reborn, becomes hugely important in Shadowbringers. Urianger works undercover a little bit with the Warriors of Darkness to sort of set up the end of the conflict with them. But then from them you learn that the Ascians, who are a little present in Heavensward, but not nearly as heavily as the Dragonsong people, because the Ascians were trying to manipulate Thordan behind the scenes, but Thordan had his own agenda. You end up fighting a couple Ascians in the in Azysla as well.
Yeah, in the Etherochemical Research Facility.
Yeah, but the Warriors of Darkness tell you that basically their home world has fallen to due to Ascian manipulation, and they're trying to restore their world by taking something from your world. It does not work out for them, but those Warriors of Darkness from 2 or 3 patches in Heavensward become very, very important in Shadowbringers. But we won't talk about them right now. Let's go into some personal likes and dislikes about Heavensward. We've covered basically everything, but I'll go first. But let's talk about what our favorite and least favorite dungeons, trials, or raids are from this game. Just sort of our favorite and least favorite pieces of gameplay content in Heavensward. I'll go first. I've mentioned that I love the Warring Triad trials, but I think my favorite dungeon in the game is one of the level 60 optional dungeons called the Fractal Continuum. Because that is, Fractal Continuum is a great Allagan-themed dungeon, so it's got a lot of Magitech, a lot of sort of fancy, almost Tron-like technology going through it, and it has such a great theme song. I love the Fractal Continuum music. It is a jam. Holy moly. And least favorite, I don't know. Most of the stuff is pretty good. I think that there's one dungeon that I like a lot called the Anti-Tower, where you're basically just going upside down through a crazy tower summoned into the ether by Matoya. But the reason I don't like it is because the final boss of the Anti-Tower is the Calbrena dolls from FF4, and those things have always creeped me out.
Yeah,
and even the FF4 Waltz of the Dolls song is the boss music for Anti-Tower, so cool. which is cool, but also is a little traumatizing. So I'm putting in a game with a lot of fantastic content. The most unforgivable content in that is the Anti-Tower final boss.
But the music for the rest of the Anti-Tower is just
the Anti-Tower theme is pretty good. It's no Fractal Continuum, but it's very, very good. But the Calbrena or Calcobrena, whatever their name is, don't want any part of them. So give me your thoughts on favorite piece of gameplay content from FF14 Heavensward and least favorite. Whoever's ready to go.
I guess mine, and I think there's Samal or Sorkai, like the one where you fight Midgardsormr at the end. Is my favorite dungeon. I cannot remember the name for sure.
The Midgardsormr fight is at the end of Keeper of the Lake.
No, not Midgardsormr.
At the end of Samal, you fight Tomlin or whatever that dragon's name is.
There's one you fight Hraesvelgr at the end, right?
Yeah. Teomon is at the end of the
Hraesvelgr is Sorkai.
Sorkai.
Sorkai is Hraesvelgr's trial, right? Yeah, that is Sorkai.
Yeah, he trials you.
Yeah, just like the music there, like the way, like the floating of it. It's just like there's like some stunning moments, like when you're like floating into like the final area that you can just like see. Like I think that one is fabulous. And maybe because I've played it 16 times in the last week, the Void Arc is definitely my least favorite piece of content in Final Fantasy XIV Heavensward. Honestly, like it's just like not a very good alliance raid. I think that the other two are better, but because of the way that queuing works for the relic quests, like no one else is queuing for anything else.
What's the boss? What's the boss at the end of Void Arc? I'm struggling to remember.
There's Chuchulain is the second to last one, and then the last one is it's a flying thing. I should know.
Is it Echidna?
Yeah, it's Echidna.
It's Echidna.
Yeah. Echidna is not as good as the hair demon at the end of Weeping City. Yeah. Right.
I still like them both better than the first Crystal Tower raid, but
Labyrinth of the Ancients. I've run Labyrinth of the Ancients so many times that it doesn't even register me as
four people on the pad. 4 people on the pad. Oh my goodness. But yeah,
new mechanics.
That's like a pretty low bar. Like I can name like probably 20 things in A Realm Reborn that I like less than the Void Arc. You know what I mean? So like, even like, it's not offensive or anything. It's just not. Or Veil, for example.
I did not have very many kind words to say about the 1,000 Miles of Toto Rack in the previous.
Yeah, Cutter's Cry.
There's a reason I call it 1,000 Miles of Toto Crap. But anyway,
I think Peter called it 1,000 Miles of Total Suck. So you're on the same wavelength.
Anyway, least favorite is still pretty low. I mean, like the Lost Vigil, I think is like a 51, and it's just okay. But yeah, I mean, I think they're mostly really good.
All right, so Liz, what's your favorite and least favorite bit of gameplay content in FF14?
Oh god, there's just so much content. I love the Warring Triad. They were a lot of fun, and doing the extremes, there's like so many cool and new mechanics at the time.
All 3 of them are so cool. Holy moly.
Yeah, all 3 of them are pretty amazing. Sephiroth is my favorite because he had like some badass music. And it was just like edgy as hell, and I don't know, I like stupid stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a song change in the middle of the Sephiroth fight, and it goes to some really crunchy, like metal punk stuff in the second half.
Yeah. So all the Warring Triad fights start out with like it's like a song from Final Fantasy VI, and then when you get to the second phase of each of those fights, they all have their own theme, and Sephiroth's is just totally crunchy, edgy, just like hard rock theme, and it's just like so much fun. I adore that fight so much. Least favorite would be, oh god, hopefully you guys didn't have to deal with this dungeon too much, but it's an optional dungeon called Never Reap, and it just sucks. It's not hard, it's just boring, and it sucks. Yeah, and when it was an expert roulette, it was more like always reap, because you always got it. Like, it was usually between that or Fractal Continuum, and I just would rather have had Fractal Continuum every single time.
Yeah, the level 80 versions of those two are Twinning and Academia Annider, but those 2 dungeons both rule. While
I like both of those.
Yeah, while I mean, but the choice between Never Reap and Fractal Continuum is hardly a choice at all, because Fractal Continuum is so much better than Never Reap.
Yeah.
I have correction.
So
my favorite piece
bouncing between all the islands, just blah.
is the Nidhogg trial. The Nidhogg trial is incredible.
Oh yeah, which is the final story. The final story trial in 3.3 ish. I think.
Yeah, it's 3.3. Yeah,
right. That one was so much fun as well.
And the mount you get from the extreme one of that is the purple bird. Oh, it's my favorite mount in the game. So anyway, it's a great trial.
Nice.
Yeah, that trial is so much fun because you actually like fight Estinian for a short part of it, as in his red form that you mentioned earlier, Mike, and it was just like, it was just epic. He does like his Dragoon moves and everything, and you just gotta like dodge the hell out of it.
I think that the FF14 team has gotten better at dungeon and trial and raid design with each game, but they started to really get great in Heavensward. Like, there's good stuff in Realm Reborn, but Heavensward is the content delivery model and the gameplay model that FF14 has been refining since 2015, and I hope listeners that our enthusiasm for this has been communicated properly, because this is, to many people, the best part of FF14. I'm not sure I have that opinion, but there's a reason that this is a fan favorite, and what got people more excited than ever about FF14 in 2015 when it landed. But looking to the future a little bit, Zach, I know that you're a Dragoon Dark Knight double main. Everyone knows that I am a warrior and a monk, first and foremost, and a gunbreaker on the side. And Liz, you are a well-documented ninja and Dark Knight, depending on what you have to do. But I think,
it's mostly Dark Knight these days.
Okay,
but Ninja's definitely a very close second choice.
I remember for a while in maybe 2019, you were lamenting parts of the ninja rotation. Because I think maybe in your static you were the signature ninja for a while, and
Yeah,
being
they have fixed it since then, but basically back then, Ninja had a lot of off global cooldowns and
Good
a very
Lord,
short GCD. So Ninja would hurt your hands if you played it too much for a while. But they fixed that.
Yeah, for a while. I mean, when I was learning Ninja around then, you had to be like a concert pianist to be able to fit in all of the all of your mudras and rudras and Kama Sudras in time. It was
absolutely insane.
So
like
anyway,
now.
No, go ahead.
Like now the mudra are on global cooldown, which is a whole lot of buttons no longer on OGCD. So it's definitely like easier on the hands, and you can still do like really good DPS on it and feel like a concert pianist. But it's definitely much less stressful than it used to be.
But it's still stressful to land your trick attack properly, because you don't even count as a human if you screw up your trick attack. But that brief class discussion or job discussion was to say, how excited are we about Sage and whatever the other job is in Endwalker? Because oh boy, we're going to what is it? We're going to Bozja, we're going to Garlemald, we're going to the moon, and we get to be
Thavnair.
yeah, Thavnair. That's what it is. I couldn't remember the name of that city, and it's Thavnair, the crazy metropolis, neutral metropolis in between Garlemald and Eorzea. But what's one thing or one hope or one moment, like what's your hope or hype from that you want to see out of Endwalker? Just one thing. It can be literally any FF14 thing. I'll go first. I want them to change the triple triad rules to allow multiple 4-stars in. That's all.
Of course.
Mm-hmm. Please. 4-star cards might not as well exist, because every deck in the world should be 4 3-stars and 1 5-star. So change the rules a little bit. Allow an extra 4-star to shatter the meta of triple triad, please. So who else has an Endwalker explanation hope?
As far as new jobs go, I'm indifferent to Sage just because I'm a terrible healer. Never asked me to heal. Mm-hmm. So the Sage announcement was like, oh cool, I got a Gundam healer. But I'm curious about the new melee job. Like I've seen like a couple size in the Endwalker announcement, showcase. So I'm hoping for like some kind of melee. They did say melee, so I'm hoping that involves size and like, I don't know, lifesteal.
As someone who has, I only have a couple level 80s, but 2 of them are monk and samurai, so I do enjoy a nice melee. And the joke is that whenever Yoshi P does one of his FanFest announcements, he wears a shirt that teases the next announcement. So at the event where they announced Endwalker and Sage, he was wearing he wore 2 shirts at different times, and they were both, I think, Japanese death metal bands or something, but they showed skulls and scythes on the shirt.
Yeah. And like Xenos has one in the trailer, and there's a couple other, you see scythes a couple of other times as well. So, and they did say that Dragoon was kind of lonely in such that they're the only ones that wear maiming gear on their left side. Oh. So it was a hint that maybe it might be another class that shares maiming gear.
Oh, good.
And a melee scythe job would fit that description.
I am very excited about all these things.
I welcome that. Yeah, I'm a boring dude that only ever needs striking and fending gear. So throw the Dragoon mains a bone, please. But people are thinking maybe Necromancer, maybe some kind of Death Knight thing. A lot of theory crafting out there, but we won't know for sure until the next big FF14 announcement, which I think is coming in something like May.
I think.
Yeah.
I want a DPS version of Dark Knight. Dark Knight was a DPS back in, or it could have been a DPS back in 11 if you played it that way.
There's a little bit
and they used scythes as well.
There's a little bit of scythe work in older Final Fantasy games, but they're usually just sort of the same class as like an axe.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of speculation going on. The one that I've seen the most is Necromancer, but I don't think anyone knows anything. But speaking of people that know nothing, I don't know. I was trying to turn that into a self-deprecating joke, but I really didn't have an end goal there. No, I was hoping that I would.
You're going to turn to me and say, "Speaking of people who know nothing, Zach, what are you excited about?"
No, I'm like, huh? I mean,
that's true. We had to hear from Zach.
I mean, oh damn! I'm sorry. Oh yeah. What, I mean, other than second use for your maiming gear, Zach, what's something I hope you have about FF14 Endwalker?
I mean, the naming gear thing was the thing I was going to go with, but honestly, it's like, give me the Final Fantasy IV nostalgia. Like, I feel like a lot of other Final Fantasy games have gotten a ton of nostalgia, whereas Final Fantasy IV is the game that I have the most nostalgia for, probably in the series, because I've just played it so many times, and it was the first RPG that I really remember vividly playing as a kid.
It was my first RPG.
Yeah, so I'm just excited about that, and honestly, please give me more inventory space. Please give me more inventory space.
More glamour chest space.
Yeah, every time I complain about it, Mike's like, "You don't even craft." I'm like, I know I don't craft. How could it be worse? It's like,
yes.
Like
and crafting makes it 100 times worse.
Yeah, that's
Would you like to see my retainers?
No, I would not.
I mean, removing belts from the game to add some ring and weapon inventory space is a good start. But I mean, we want more. Whatever they can give us, Yoshi P, please.
You agreed.
All right, so sorry for briefly forgetting about you, Zach. Again, I know nothing, but let's. I mean, that's the future of Final Fantasy XIV and a little bit of the past of Final Fantasy XIV. But let's talk about the future of Retro Encounter now. Next week we're doing an episode on Crimson Shroud, a Matsuno 3DS WiiWare game. Or no, not WiiWare. Whatever is it 3DS iWare is the name of that storefront. But anyway, it's a download only 3DS game, released a couple years ago that is unique and weird, and we wanted to talk about it, so we're podcasting about it next week. I still have to finish that thing in time to record next week. But then later this month, we're doing 2 episodes on Muramasa the Demon Blade, the Vanillaware action RPG that was started out on the Wii and eventually found its way to the Vita. And I had so much fun playing 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim. I got a little bit bi-curious about other Vanillaware games, so we're trying out Muramasa later this month. But, it is the first episode of the month. That means I can talk about what's going on in April. In April, we're doing an episode on Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood, the same pattern as these previous 2 FF14 episodes, and 2 episodes on Suikoden 3. Suikoden is a big fan favorite series. Whenever we post anything about Suikoden, people come out of the woodwork and it gets incredible social media shine. So we're going to try and grab some of that shine by playing Suikoden 3 over the course of a month and podcasting about it over 2 episodes in April. I played the beginning of Suikoden 3 like 15 years ago, and I found it confusing, but now I'm going to go in with a better mindset and a determination to actually finish it, or at least make it past hour 3. We'll see. And Zach, I know you're a big Suikoden fan, and you were on the Suikoden 5 episodes a year or 2 ago, but sadly joined RPGFan after those Suikoden 2 episodes.
I know.
So how excited are you? How excited are you for Suikoden 3?
I'm incredibly excited. Honestly, I haven't played Suikoden 3 since release, and my memory of it is not super great. Because it's pretty different from Suikoden 1 and 2, and I just wanted Suikoden 3 to be just like Suikoden 2 and 1. And they definitely try some things out there, and I'm excited to give it a shot again. And that game came out in 2002, so if you played it, say, within a year after it came out, it's been probably 16 or 17 years for you. Yep. Yeah, I played it. I think I bought it on release day, so yeah. All right. So that's high school. That's Suikoden 3 coming in April, and something in May that we've started to plan out, and I'm excited about, but don't want to talk about yet. But if you want to send us suggestions or comments or anything at all directed towards the podcast producers, please email us at retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on RPGFan's message boards, visit our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our Twitter, our Discord, our YouTube, something streaming on Twitch almost every day. There's also 3 other fine podcasts hosted or promoted by RPGFan: Random Encounter, every 2 weeks about randomness; Rhythm Encounter, every 2 weeks about RPG music; and Phoenix Edge, our partner podcast run by Hat and Eric, and a weekly podcast mostly focused on current events. You can review Retro Encounter or those other 3 fine podcasts on iTunes or Google Play or Spotify or however you are listening to us. Provide whatever feedback you can. Please give us any attention at all. But if you want to give us attention at a more individual level, let's see how you can find our panelists individually, starting with you, Zach. You can email me at zachw@rpgfan.com, or you can find me on Discord at zachw. And Liz.
You can find me at liz@rpgfan.com. I'm not sure if it still works. Or mostly I'm doodling about on Twitter at @_saltedearth. Yes, it's a Dark Knight spell, I know.
Yeah, holy moly, how did we podcast about Final Fantasy XIV for almost 90 minutes and not talk about the Dark Knight quests?
Oh my god.
Holy
They're
crap.
the most beautiful quests ever. Everybody must do them.
I don't love Dark Knight. I think Dark Knight is my least favorite tank to play, but it has the best quests. Holy crap.
Yeah.
They're just so much more personal compared to literally every other job quest in the game, because it's more like about you and your various subconsciousness. And even the Stormblood one has a callback to both Horsefront and Ysayle and, all the stuff he did in the Dragonsong War.
Yeah, and Frey is just one of the best NPCs in the whole game.
Frey is wonderful. Frey even becomes a literal living shadow when you get to Dark Knight 80. Mm-hmm. Frey's your 80 spell.
Yeah, you get to summon Frey to fight alongside you as level 80 Dark Knight, and that I have Dark Knight I think at 60. That summon makes me think about, man, maybe I should level up Dark Knight.
It's like a 180-second cooldown. Like you can use it relatively frequently. It's super awesome.
Yeah, no,
it's 120, so it's every 2 minutes. So it's like nice, and it's like having a dot basically every couple minutes.
Yeah, but it's the big tech Dark Knight spell though, right? Pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Probably the most useful and the probably even more popular one is the 71, which is the Blackest Night, which is 25% shield that you can put on yourself or a party member.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly useful.
Yeah, Blackest Night either shields you a ton or shields you enough and then refills all of your meters again, which is crazy good.
If you take enough damage for it to be used up, and then you basically get a free DPS spell. And it's on, it uses MP, but it's only on cooldown every 15 seconds, so you can actually use it a lot, which is very helpful in Savage.
Yeah, but maybe a little bit less extravagant and dramatic than summoning Frey to fight alongside you. But
yeah, it's less extravagant, but much more useful. All of Frey is very cool.
All right, so I'm glad we fit that in, because I don't think we could avoid talking about Frey in this episode. I'm glad we did that. But listeners, if you want to reach out to me, the best way to do so is probably Twitter. I'm at The Real Monsoon most of the time, at Evoker for Dogs other times, and on RPG Fan's Discord, I am Monsoon Mike. So, okay.
Just leave on there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're just Liz. I had to fish around Discord to find you so we could record this podcast.
Yeah, my bad for not having Google.
No, it's all good.
Usually I do.
No, but I mean, you are semi-retired from RPG Fan, and you've only been on Retro Encounter twice ever. So I'm really, really glad that I got to talk to you, Liz, about one of your sort of signature fandoms. And having Zach, you and I together as sort of like the new player, intermediate player, advanced player, I thought was a great dynamic. So thank you so much for joining us, Liz.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you to you too, Zach. I know we've podcasted a lot recently, but you haven't been on a game journal since September. So we got to reconnect for that Suikoden 3 podcast. We're going to make it happen.
I'll be there.
Right on. Listeners,
that sounds awesome.
From Zach, Liz, and I, thank you, good night, and good luck.